This needs to effing stop. Donald Trump is beholden to Netanyahu, beholden to Israel, and we need to talk about it. I'm joined by friend of the show, Micah Irfan, our lead policy advisor. And we want to cover not only some breaking news coming out of the Middle East, but just our broad beliefs on the way Israel has been conducting this war in an asymmetric way. For the past 2 years, we've gotten so desensitized to these repeated strikes that it's not even unique when we see a headline like this. Israel bombs Gaza wedding as U.S. mediators hold ceasefire talks in United States. Israeli attack kills at least 6 Palestinians. Another 6 Palestinians attending a wedding party at a school turned shelter in Gaza City. Millions of people turned homeless because Israel is launching and perpetuating this asymmetric war against Palestine. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this idea that the Israelis push, which is that this is all in defense from October 7th. There's terrorist organizations that are active, and Israel has a right to defend itself. But that's not what's happening anymore. Hamas is gone. They've leveled Gaza. I mean, they've killed over 70,000 people. Hezbollah is gone. The Houthi rebels are largely gone. And Israel is clearly on offense. They've also occupied southern Syria, which people aren't talking about. For over 11 months now, Israel is occupying part of a foreign country, and they're also kicking out Syrians out of that southern part of Syria. What are the actual aims of Israel here? It seems like their aims are conquest. We see that in the West Bank. Right now, Israel is going to Palestinian lands that have been held by Palestinians for centuries. And they're telling Palestinians living in Palestinian homes that they don't have a right to live there anymore because they don't have a permit. They're kicking them out, they're demolishing their home, and they're constructing an Israeli settlement where that home used to be placed. Because what is their goal? Their goal is ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. The state of Israel does not want to have Palestinians living within it. And everything they do clearly indicates that. That's why they've turned Gaza into a living hell. And that's why day by day they're taking more Palestinian territory in the West Bank for themselves.
Very well said. And that's why there is a huge problem with the United States shoveling money into Israel endlessly. I mean, we have some stats. $3.8 billion goes to Israel per year, but since Trump took office, an extra $12 billion has already been pledged, plus an additional $3 billion, according to Marco Rubio, correct?
Yeah, so $12 billion of weapons sales, and then over $3 billion of additional aid to Israel. And let's just talk about how ridiculous this is, that we're giving a foreign country, a rich country, a country that doesn't even respect us, that doesn't abide by basic human rights, we're giving them $3.8 billion a year.
Unconditionally.
That's more than we spend on a lot of issues. There's a lot of countries that are struggling around this world. We've ended almost all foreign aid, except for Israel. Why is that? Why do we not have money to help Africans that are struggling with infectious diseases, to combat, I don't know, to even work on cancer research, which is something that we've cut dramatically in this country. Meanwhile, we have money for bombs for Israel. Like, we never have money for Americans that are struggling with their health care. Millions of Americans are in medical debt, but somehow we can keep endlessly paying for Israel's crazy wars, killing innocent Palestinians.
And then United States taxpayer dollars and bombs, like you said, are going to Israel, and it's going towards the farthest thing from human dignity possible. We talk about that a lot. It's human dignity. Like liberals, the most basic fundamental thing we care about is human dignity. Israel is stripping that away in an authoritarian, terrible way by just carpet bombing their neighbors relentlessly. Palestine is being struck. They struck Syria recently, or they're invading Syria, right?
Yeah. They're literally invading and occupying Syria. And their idea is that this is some sort of a defensive measure. This is the unique thing about Israel. Israel is always on defense, but they're always shooting first. It's really strange to me, right? Like, all of the conflicts they've engaged in recently, except for the one after October 7th, are ones that they initiated, but it's always defensive. And I think at a certain point you have to say, I'm not sure if I believe Israeli intelligence whenever they say that they're on defense. Of course, there are actors in the Middle East that are bad faith actors. I oppose terrorism. I'm half Iranian. If anybody hates the Iranian regime a lot, it's Iranians. But the thing is, Israel is a bad faith actor. It is an offensive actor. Israel is the one who told us that we should invade Iraq under George W. Bush. How did that turn out for us? Israel is not a good faith actor. And the idea that they're just trying to defend themselves and pursuing human rights and they just want peace with their neighbors is absolutely ridiculous. They have complete control in the West Bank, and yet they use that control not to establish peaceful relations with the local Palestinian population, but to constantly assert domination over them and to steal their land. And that's totally unacceptable.
And last night we were talking, you laid out the criteria for when we should fund a country. You said there's very narrow but legit situations where we should fund a country. First of all, we should never have unconditional aid to any country. That's wild. The idea that we just keep shoveling aid and we don't get any sort of say in how they use that and they can continue to strip away human dignity and human rights, effing insane. But the criteria that you laid out, as if I remember correctly last night, was number one, they have to be the good guys.
So yeah, they had to be the good guys. They had to have a chance of losing, right? They actually might lose.
Oh, sorry.
And our aid actually needs to be able to help them. And none of those things are present in Israel. Let's look at Ukraine. Yeah. Ukraine's a fantastic example where we've supported aid because it's justified. Ukraine is the good guy. The Russians are aggressors. They're slaughtering Ukrainians and trying to take their territory. Ukraine is also poor. They don't have access to the money to finance all the weaponry they need. And so by giving them money, we're actually helping them win. And they might lose, right?
They might lose.
And so here's the case with Israel. Israel is not the good guy. Israel is the bad guy now. Hamas is gone. This is a war not on Hamas, not on terrorists, on civilians. That's why they keep bombing these. I mean, they're killing people at weddings. They're bombing mosques. Who is left in Gaza? Are there any terrorists left? One 15-year-old with an AK-47 does not justify the slaughtering and the rendering homeless of 2 million people in Gaza. Yep. 2 million people in Gaza, everybody that lives there are practically homeless at this point. With that being said, they are not the good guys. And they're not going to lose. Yeah. They're absolutely going to win. And they're a rich country. Everybody in Israel has health insurance. Is that true in America?
No.
We have a deficit that's $2.2 trillion a year. It's actually a little bit higher thanks to the Trump administration. We don't have money to even pay for the things that we need for Americans. Social Security is going to go bust in 2033. Meanwhile, we're doling out huge checks, enormous checks to this country. Why?
Yeah, to add on to that, I want to take a really quick broad view of it too, because we're two young guys, both wearing sweatshirts from colleges we didn't go to. I didn't go to Harvard, he didn't go to fucking Michigan, but we're both two young guys, obviously. And there's a growing generational divide on this topic of Israel. Honestly, it's more prominent in the Republican Party because the old school Republicans are trying to hold the line on Israel, and then the younger Republicans are turning not just anti-Israel. These younger Republicans are on some next level shit.
Anti-Semitic.
They're
calling me Jewish every day.
These younger Republicans were yelling like Jew at the Turning Point USA event. This is different stuff, and that needs to be condemned, of course.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying here is that there's this interesting generational divide where young people seem to have the filter, like the rose-colored glasses, pulled away, and now we understand that Israel isn't an ally that we should just unconditionally, endlessly send aid to. And there's still a lot of people in my audience already are where we are. So a lot of people in the Democratic Party, no matter what age, are there. But there are still a lot of people in the Democratic Party that vote in favor of aid for Israel. I mean, it's still deeply embedded within our party. People like Ro Khanna speaking out against Israel, that's new. That's like groundbreaking. So there's a growing divide in how people see this. Maybe it's not even generational. Maybe it's more what social media you consume. Right. Like if you consume more social media that injects into your feed the on-the-ground reality of Palestine, maybe you're more likely to then turn pro-Palestine. But either way, there's an interesting divide growing where the United States is really not happy with Israel, and the people here aren't.
Americans are really upset with Israel, and they're upset with our political class, which keeps funding them despite the fact that we don't want money to Israel. They have their Israeli flags outside of their offices like this is some sort of foreign country. I understand expressing solidarity with the people that are under attack. If we're going to be expressing with solidarity with anybody in the Middle East, it should be the Palestinians because they're the people that are currently under attack.
Yeah.
This is not, October 7th happened a very long time ago, and it was a terrible thing.
Of course.
But at this point, over 70 times as many or maybe 50 times as many Palestinians have died at the hands of Israel than Israelis at the hands of Hamas. At a certain point, enough is enough.
You said this, you were like, every single person who was a part of October 7th, dead. Every single one of their family members, dead. Every single building they've ever stepped foot into, on the ground, crumbled. Every single street they've walked on is now just full of building, aftermath. So it's just interesting.
Right. And the talking points to support Israel are ridiculous. There's two main talking points that I think we should address. One talking point is that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. You cannot be a democracy if about 40% of your population or 45% of your population cannot vote. That's the state of Israel. Palestinians don't have their own state. They're within Israel, and they don't have voting rights. They don't have equal rights either, right? And Gaza controls territories, of course, but also in the West Bank. The West Bank, yes, there's the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority doesn't have control over its basic infrastructure.
Let me give you the devil's advocate. What they would say, if I were like a super Zionist, I would say, it's not that it's the only democracy, it's that it's the closest thing to being a liberal democracy in a sea of countries that seem to want it destroyed.
And that's why Benjamin Netanyahu's been in power for literally my entire lifetime. I mean, like, how are they always controlled by the same person over and over and over again? How is it? What was that thing with their Supreme Court a little while ago? Benjamin Netanyahu is like Viktor Orban.
Yeah.
He is a far-right demagogue. It is a far-right controlled country that has eroded liberal rights and freedoms and is being incredibly repressive. They are an apartheid state. We have sanctioned countries for less than what Israel is currently doing. The idea that we have to have a debate within our own party about whether we affirmatively fund them. We should have a debate about whether we should go further than defunding them, whether we should sanction them or not. I think there's interesting arguments on both sides of that. But it's just like we've been so far in the extreme on this position. Saying that we shouldn't be affirmatively funding the war effort in another country is not the extreme position. It is the normal position. There is a burden of proof which is required to say that we're going to send billions of dollars of American taxpayer money to another country. And for some reason, these politicians are just so out of touch with Americans that they think this is normal. I think it's just indicative of the broader issue of the American political system, that our politicians are just not even remotely close to where most Americans are at.
Yeah, it was so deeply embedded in our political infrastructure that it honestly wasn't something you really questioned. Like 10 years ago, you don't really talk about that. It's not something you question openly. Now, people are talking about it. Obviously, people on the far right are taking it way too far.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely important to be talking about this, providing moral clarity. And back to my point where I was playing devil's advocate, it's interesting because they can't claim to have moral high ground because they have human rights and human dignity inside the country when the countries surrounding them are just being relentlessly bombed with no human dignity. They are massacring people. You can't claim to be a beacon of human rights in the Middle East if your beacon of human rights is the one that is probably the biggest purveyor of stripping human rights away from people around you. So we're gonna leave it there. If you appreciate the videos we make on the Adam Mockler feed, you can click subscribe below. You'll also see Micah's channel. If you appreciate the message, make sure you drop a blue heart to boost it. I love you all, and peace out.
Thanks, guys.